Imagine this 5 years of your life. Every paycheck bled dry to save your family. You send them $180,000, believing one day they'll finally see your worth. But when the spotlight comes, they call you a failure, while praising the brother who stole everything. Tonight, in front of 200 witnesses, one invisible daughter stands up and the truth rips a family empire apart. Do you think you could survive that kind of betrayal? Stay with me because this story will shake everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and revenge. And hey, if you like stories like this, hit subscribe right now. If not, just drop a number 6 inches the comments, I'll know you're still watching. The chandeliers at the Fairmont Ballroom looked like upside-down constellations, golden galaxies suspended over a sea of tuxedos and sequined gowns. Waiters slipped between tables like quiet currents, silver trays glinting, champagne winking in flute glasses. At the front, a lacquered stage framed by orchids waited for the man of the hour. At the back, by the service doors and the soft sigh of an ice bucket, sat me Harper Collins smiling for no one. From across the room, I watched my parents work the crowd with polished ease. Richard's hand never left Maggie's back. They floated together, a single posture of pride. Their faces lit with that soft, indulgent glow reserved for parents of prodigies. They weren't looking for me. They never looked for me at nights like this. The banner above the stage announced it in embossed letters. Celebrating Dr. Ethan Caldwell, excellence in leadership. He wore success like a tailored suit because tonight, he literally did. People leaned toward him as if he were a fireplace on a January night. Surgeons, trustees, donors, the air around him felt warmer, brighter, easier. Someone near me whispered, "His parents must be over the moon." I didn't correct them. I'd learned, a long time ago, to save my breath for things that mattered. I traced the rim of my water glass and let the noise blur into a single, velvety hum. Somewhere at the edge of that sound, a memory clicked into place. The living room years ago, my acceptance letters in a neat stack on the coffee table, and my mother's voice sliding over them like a paperweight. "Accounting?" she'd said carefully, as if the word might stain the rug. My father hadn't been careful at all. Meaningful people become doctors, Harper. They don't count other people's wins. I had smiled the way polite girls smile when the ground shifts under their feet. 10 years since then. 1,000 versions of that same conversation. I learned to wear invisibility like a second skin, convincing, wrinkle-free, easy to ignore. I learned to shrink my needs into polite emails and my victories into calendar invites. I learned to keep sending money and keep swallowing silence. They never saw the cost of that. 60 transfers, 3,000 each, 5 years running. The arithmetic of love measured in auto debits and uncredited grace. English, auto-generated. My P. A laugh spilled from the center tables, bright and effortless. Ethan had arrived at his dais. The hospital's executives formed a glittering crescent around him. Somewhere among them stood Dr. Andavelius, Veronica Hayes, the new CEO, hair sleek, posture unbothered, the kind of woman who understood how quickly a narrative hardens in a room like this. A donor clapped Ethan's shoulder. A resident lifted a phone for a photo. My mother dabbed at the corner of her eye. "Do you work in medicine too?" a woman at my table asked. She was somebody's +1, her bracelet a small planet circling her wrist. "No," I said, soft enough to pass as modesty. "I work with numbers." Her smile flashed pity like a business card. "Well, that's practical." I glanced down at my phone. 2 messages from Olivia Bennett, clear, competent, underlined with urgency. "Board wants confirmation on tomorrow's call. Tokyo is 6 hours ahead, need your decision." I locked the screen. The timing would keep. Tonight, I would not be the girl hunched over a phone at the back table, tapping approval codes while the family golden boy learned how applause feels against a tuxedo. Tonight, if I was going to breathe, I would do it with both lungs. Ethan stepped to the microphone and the room obeyed. His voice carried that practiced blend of warmth and steel that makes people believe in miracles on a schedule. "I want to thank the board for believing in my vision," he began, and a current of admiration rippled to the walls. "Together, we're going to transform pediatric surgery at Street Martins. We're going to save lives others might give up on." The applause landed in waves. Somewhere in the front row, Maggie cried and Richard's arm tightened around her shoulders. English, auto-generated. My P. I let the words wash past. Somewhere beneath them, a colder truth pulsed. In the quiet arithmetic of our family, Ethan had always been the plus sign and I had been the small print. The scholarship funds he promised, the remodels my parents boasted about, the vacations recounted over Thanksgiving pie those stories never included, the footnote that explained who kept the lights on when retirement hit too soon, who paid a mortgage the month a pension didn't stretch, who turned a bonus into a roof, and a tax refund into a cruise. Every month, 3,000. Every year, the silence grew teeth. English, auto-generated. My P. A slideshow flickered to life behind Ethan white coat, award podium, hospital corridor, a hand clasped with a grateful parent, a sunrise shot of the city cut with the slogan, "Excellence is a habit." It was beautiful in that antiseptic way hospital videos are beautiful, all clean lines and promise. I was not in it. I never am. The camera needs a subject. Some families never learn to widen the frame. Family is everything, Ethan said, smiling toward my parents, and a gentle laugh moved through the tables, tender and complicit. I felt my jaw unclench, then relock. I had not come to heckle the sermon. I had come to notice myself breathing, even from the back row. A server leaned in. Another sparkling water? Please. The glass landed with a delicate chime. I pictured Olivia in our office, lights low, screens bright, a spreadsheet open to a line item with the hospital's name on it, and a number 500,000 folded neatly at the end. I pictured the board chair waiting in a time zone where Tuesday had already begun. And I pictured a single, simple sentence waiting in my outbox that could tilt an institution. Across the room, Dr. Hayes tilted her head in almost imperceptible motion, but I felt its gravity. Leaders know when a room is running on myth. They also know when a story is about to change narrators. A soft, familiar ache rose in my throat, the ache of being present and erased in the same breath. I pressed a palm against the linen and counted to 5. Somewhere between 3 and 4, something inside me shifted. Not a snap. Those are loud and theatrical. This was quieter, like a locked door clicking open from the inside. Ethan lifted his glass for the toast. Cameras floated up like small moons. All at once I could see the whole architecture of the night. The script, the spotlight, the practiced gratitude, the way love in our house had always been measured in headlines and job titles. I could also see the line where the story must be rewritten. I set my glass down. The stem chimed again, a tiny bell in a cathedral no one else could hear. This is what it feels like, I thought, to stop choosing absence. And then I stood. The applause from Ethan's toast still clung to the air when my mind wandered backward, to the first fracture that had widened into a canyon between me and my family. I was 17. Standing in our living room, acceptance letters spread like confetti across the coffee table. Harvard, Yale, Wharton, all with scholarships that proved I had earned my place. I was trembling with excitement when I finally said it out loud. I want to study accounting. Silence. My mother, Maggie, blinked as if I'd announced I was running off to join the circus. Accounting? She repeated, the word thick on her tongue, like something bitter she couldn't swallow. My father, Richard, didn't bother hiding his disappointment. Harper, meaningful people become doctors, lawyers, architects, not bean counters. Look at your brother. Look at Ethan. He's saving lives. What will you do? Calculate other people's success? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I was still clutching my acceptance letter, knuckles white, when Ethan walked in, already glowing with his pre-med certainty. Richard turned toward him with a smile I hadn't seen all evening. That's what ambition looks like, he said. That's what makes a family proud. That was the night invisibility slipped over me like a second skin. From then on, no matter what I achieved, it was met with a polite nod, a distracted, "That's nice, dear." When I graduated summa cum laude, my parents mailed a card, 2 lines of encouragement. No visit, no celebration. When Ethan published his first research paper, they threw him a dinner for 30. I learned the rhythm quickly. Ethan's triumphs were family history. Mine were barely footnotes. At 24, I landed my first position at Hartfield Corporation. It was a Fortune 500 company, the kind of place that chewed through bright analysts and left husks behind. I fought harder, stayed later, delivered sharper reports than anyone else. And still, when I called home to share, Mom's response was tepid. "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Ethan got selected for the surgical fellowship? They only pick 2 in the whole state." By 27, I had bought my own apartment, modest but entirely mine. My father's reaction? "Don't get too comfortable. 1-bedroom condos aren't real property investments." The following week, Ethan purchased a townhouse, largely financed by his fiancée Lauren's family, and Richard toasted him at Thanksgiving. Now that's a smart move. That's security. Every milestone I reached became invisible next to the halo that surrounded Ethan. Every sacrifice I made was swallowed whole by the narrative that my parents chose to believe that one child was destined for greatness and the other was destined to orbit quietly in his shadow. And yet, despite the bitterness, despite the way their words cut deeper than they realized, I couldn't stop giving. When Richard confessed one Christmas that the mortgage weighed heavy after retirement, I quietly set up an automatic transfer. $3,000 a month. I never missed one. That money could have gone toward a graduate degree, a down payment on a larger home, even a simple vacation I hadn't taken in years. Instead, it went into their joint account, fueling repairs, renovations, medical bills, groceries. They thought it was Ethan. They thanked him openly, showered him with gratitude at family dinners. "Ethan takes such good care of us," Maggie would say while passing the mashed potatoes. I never corrected her. Not once. Because some part of me still believed, maybe foolishly, that if I gave enough, if I sacrificed enough, I would finally matter. But 5 years and $180,000 later, the truth was colder. Nothing I did could thaw the ice of comparison. Nothing could make them see me. And tonight, sitting at the back table while Ethan's slideshow painted him as savior, I realized something essential. It wasn't just that they overlooked me, it was that they had chosen not to see me. And that choice, their choice, was about to meet its reckoning. The spotlight kept Ethan gilded at the front of the ballroom, but my mind pulled toward the quiet ledger I had carried alone for years. Not the kind with neat columns and ink, but the invisible arithmetic of sacrifice. It began with that first transfer, $3,000, memo line, for Mom and Dad. "Love, Harper." I still remember staring at the confirmation screen, thinking maybe, just maybe, this would be the beginning of something different. Maybe they'd see me. Maybe gratitude would soften the sharp edges of every comparison. But gratitude never arrived. Instead, Maggie told her book club that Ethan had saved them when the bank threatened foreclosure. Richard raised a glass at Christmas to his son who understands family responsibility. My aunts praised Ethan's devotion. Cousins envied my parents for having such a generous doctor in the family. And me? I smiled. I even clapped, because correcting them would have meant peeling back the curtain on a truth too heavy for anyone else to hold. Their golden boy was gleaming with the polish I paid for. 5 years, 60 months, $180,000. That money paid off their mortgage, covered medical bills, and funded a kitchen renovation Maggie boasted about to every neighbor on the block. She even called the granite countertops Ethan's gift. I had picked the stone myself during a rushed weekend visit, standing beside her as she beamed and told the contractor, "My son is such a blessing." Blessing. That word stung more than the money ever could. Meanwhile, my own life shrank into frugality. I drove a 10-year-old Honda with the AC that coughed every July. My wardrobe was a careful rotation of sale rack basics, pressed to look more expensive than they were. Vacations? None. Birthdays? Modest dinners alone or with colleagues who only knew the Harper that signed budgets, not the Harper who went home to be forgotten. Every month, when my salary cleared, I felt the weight of obligation before I felt the relief of income. Rent, utilities, student loans. Those came after the ritual $3,000 siphoned away to people who barely remembered to call me on my birthday. It was a tether I had tied myself, believing it would hold us together. But with every deposit, the tether tightened around my chest. Therapy twice a week was the only reason I could keep breathing. Doctor. Martinez, calm and precise, asked me once, "What would happen if you stopped sending the money?" I laughed, a brittle sound. "They'd finally see me as what they already believe I am, selfish. A disappointment. Disappointment. That word had carved its initials into my ribs years ago, and I wore the scar every day. Yet still, I gave. I gave when Ethan showed up at family Easter bragging about the new car in his driveway. "He deserves it," Richard had said proudly. "After all he's done for us." I had quietly transferred a down payment that month, $10,000 meant for my own graduate program. I gave when Maggie announced the roof needed replacing. "Ethan made sure we could afford it," she bragged to Aunt Linda. I had wired the funds 2 days earlier, memo line. "For the roof. Don't worry about paying me back." I gave until giving became my identity, until silence was safer than truth. But something inside me began to crack the night Janet, a cousin with a sharp tongue, leaned across the Easter table. It must be hard being Ethan's sister. I mean, he's just so accomplished. But hey, we all have roles, right? He saves lives, you do taxes. She laughed. Everyone laughed. Even I laughed, though something inside me curled and snapped like brittle glass. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at my bank app. $180,000 over 5 years. The number glowed in cold blue digits, each one a tiny nail hammered into the coffin of my patience. I realized then that I wasn't giving out of love anymore. I was paying rent for a seat in a family that had already evicted me. From that night forward, the giving turned strategic. Every transfer became less about them and more about me, about the moment I knew would come, when silence would end and the truth would burn its way into daylight. And tonight, in the glittering ballroom where my name had not been spoken once, I could feel it building, the weight of every hidden sacrifice gathering like a storm just beyond the chandeliers. The reckoning was coming. The Fairmont ballroom glittered like a movie set, every corner polished for Ethan Caldwell's coronation. Doctors, trustees, and donors filled the room with their perfumed admiration, and every polished surface seemed to reflect his brilliance back at him. From my seat at table 21 tucked so close to the service doors I could smell the kitchen's roast lamb, I felt both invisible and exposed. The evening had been choreographed down to the minute. White-gloved servers poured champagne in unison, the MC's voice boomed reverently, and the slideshow of Ethan's triumphs looped across a 12-foot screen. Ethan in scrubs. Ethan shaking hands with a senator. Ethan at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Photo after photo. 47 in total. And not one of me. Not even the family Christmas portrait, because I had been the one holding the camera. Margaret's voice cracked over the microphone, her hand clutching Richard's as if their son's success was oxygen they both needed to breathe. "We always knew Ethan was destined for greatness," she said, eyes shining. "From the time he was a boy, he had purpose, drive, generosity. He's the son every parent dreams of." A ripple of laughter moved through the tables when she added lightly, "Of course, we love our daughter too. Harper does. Accounting. The kind of joke people tell when they don't realize or don't care that it slices flesh." A woman beside me patted my hand, pity dripping from her smile. "Don't worry, dear. We can't all be stars." My chest tightened. My phone buzzed again with Olivia's reminder. "Board needs final signature. $500,000 grant pending." I stared at the glowing screen, then turned it face down. Tonight was not about Hartfield Corporation's philanthropy. Tonight was about survival, the kind that comes from refusing to drown quietly. Ethan took the microphone back, launching into his speech with the confidence of a man certain the world owed him applause. "Family is everything," he said, his smile aimed squarely at our parents. "I've been blessed to provide for mine, to be their rock, their support system. That's what drives me every day." The applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Maggie dabbed her tears. Richard raised his glass, and every pair of eyes seemed to say, "What a son. What a man." And in that moment, something in me hardened. For years I had swallowed their narrative whole. I had paid for their mortgage, their renovations, their security, yet allowed Ethan to wear my sacrifices like a tailored Tom Ford suit. I had erased myself so thoroughly that my own mother could stand in a ballroom and reduce me to a punchline. Not tonight. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against marble, a sound small but sharp enough to pierce the applause. Heads turned, whispers swelled. I stood, smoothing the fabric of my black dress, and began walking forward. Each click of my heels echoed like a drumbeat. This is the sound of the invisible deciding to be seen. Maggie's smile faltered when she noticed me approaching the stage. "Harper?" she said into the microphone, her voice coated with nervous laughter. "Sweetheart, we're about to toast." I didn't stop. Richard's brow knit together, confusion shading into irritation. Ethan's jaw tightened. The first crack in his polished armor. "I'd like to say something," I announced, my voice carrying farther than I expected. Years of silence had sharpened it into steel. The ballroom hushed. 200 people watched as I reached the front, as though waiting for a sideshow, a novelty. The daughter who was never meant to leave the shadows. Ethan leaned toward me, his whisper harsh. "This isn't the time." "When is the time?" I asked, loud enough for the room to hear. "When you're taking credit for sacrifices you never made? When Mom calls you the provider while dismissing me as a footnote?" Gasps rippled. Maggie's nervous laugh broke against the microphone. "Harper, don't be ridiculous. This is Ethan's night." "You're right," I said, steady, certain. "It's always Ethan's night." I turned to the crowd, meeting faces ranging from amused to appalled. "But maybe, just once, you should hear the truth." I pulled my phone from my clutch and held it up, the banking app glowing like a spotlight in the dim hall. 5 years. 60 months. $3,000 every month. $180,000 wired into my parents' account. Every transfer signed. Love, Harper. A gasp, a whisper, then silence heavy enough to press against my ribs. Ethan stepped forward, his smile brittle. "She's confused." I cut him off, my voice slicing through the ballroom. "Confused? I have the records. Every month, every dollar. The mortgage? Paid by me. The kitchen renovation? My bonus. The anniversary cruise? My tax refund." While you all applauded Ethan's generosity, I was the one keeping this family afloat. For the first time all evening, the spotlight shifted, and under its weight, my brother's face drained of color. The silence that followed my words felt like a living thing, thick, electric, crawling across every sequined gown and polished shoe in the ballroom. 200 witnesses sat frozen, their champagne flutes suspended midair. Maggie blinked rapidly, her smile collapsing into a thin, quivering line. That's not possible," she whispered into the microphone, her voice barely audible. "We never received any money from you, Harper. Your brother handles our finances." The words landed like a hammer. My chest tightened, not from shock I'd suspected this truth for years, but from the confirmation of how deep Ethan's deception had burrowed. Ethan's voice cut across the silence, sharper than glass. "This is enough. Harper, you're embarrassing yourself. These people came to celebrate me, not listen to your fantasies." I didn't flinch. "Then let's settle it right now." I held my phone higher, the screen glowing with transfer after transfer, each one stamped with my name. "Mom, check your account right now in front of everyone." Richard tried to intervene, his voice booming, defensive. "This is inappropriate." "Sit down, Harper. Don't ruin your brother's night." But Maggie's trembling hands were already pulling out her phone. The room seemed to lean forward as she logged in, her painted nails clattering against the glass, her breath caught, her face drained of color. There's only $500 in the account," she stammered. A collective gasp broke across the crowd. Richard snatched the phone from her, scrolling furiously. "That's impossible." "Michael," he caught himself, corrected. "Ethan said we had savings." I stepped closer, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. "Check the transaction history." Maggie scrolled, her eyes widening with every swipe. Transfers, all going out. Another account. Ethan's name. Her voice cracked, a raw sound I had never heard from her before. She turned toward my brother, disbelief warring with horror. You took it? You took Harper's money? The room erupted into whispers, sharp as broken glass. Donors shifted uncomfortably. A trustee shook his head. Ethan's mask cracked. His voice rose, defensive, desperate. I invested it for the family, to grow it, to give us more than scraps from Harper's spreadsheets. My laugh cut through the noise, bitter and cold. Invested? You gambled it away. 40,000 lost in cryptocurrency, 30,000 sunk into a failed startup, 20,000 burned on day trading. You didn't multiply anything, Ethan, you incinerated it. A sharp gasp came from the board's table. Dr. Veronica Hayes rose from her seat, her posture tall and commanding. Dr. Caldwell, she said, her tone clipped. Is this true? Did you misappropriate funds under the guise of family support? Ethan's face flushed crimson, then pale. It's not like that. They were risks. Calculated risks. Calculated? I echoed, my voice slicing through the tension. Calculated enough to leave our parents with $500 to their name after 5 years of my support? The weight of the revelation shifted the room entirely. The admiration that had swelled minutes earlier curdled into suspicion, into judgment. Donors whispered behind manicured hands. One woman near the front pulled out her phone, recording. Maggie's mascara streaked down her cheeks as she clutched Richard's sleeve. Ethan, please tell me this isn't true. Ethan reached for the microphone, his voice cracking. You don't understand. I was trying to carry the family. I've been the one in the spotlight, the one people depend on. I thought, no. I cut him off, the steel in my voice leaving no room for him to wriggle free. You thought you could ride on my sacrifices forever, take credit while I disappeared into the background. But numbers don't lie, Ethan, and neither do bank statements. Dr. Hayes's eyes narrowed. And what about the grant? She asked, her voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. The $500,000 donation you assured the board was secured. Was that another calculated risk? Every eye in the ballroom turned to Ethan. He froze, his lips parting, but no words came. I stepped forward, my gaze never leaving his. Perhaps the board should ask me. After all, I'm the one with final authority at Hartfield Corporation. I pulled a gold-embossed card from my clutch and placed it on the podium. The room collectively leaned in as the title caught the light. Harper Collins, Chief Financial Officer. Gasps broke like a wave. A woman near the front whispered, That's impossible, she's just an accountant. I am an accountant, I said, lifting my chin. But I also account for $12 billion in assets, oversee 800 employees, and sign off on every grant exceeding 100,000, including the one this hospital is counting on. The chandeliers seemed to tremble with the weight of the truth. Ethan's face drained completely of color. For the first time in his carefully curated career, his power was gone. And in its place, mine had finally arrived. The ballroom had turned into a courtroom without a judge. The chandeliers, once glittering with celebration, now seemed to hang heavy, as if even they were waiting for a verdict. Ethan gripped the microphone with trembling hands, his voice rising above the chaos like a drowning man fighting for air. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his tone a brittle facsimile of authority. I apologize for this outburst. My sister, she's been struggling. Therapy, delusions of grandeur. The words stabbed deep. Gaslighting in front of 200 people. My therapist's voice echoed in my head. They will always try to discredit you when truth becomes too loud. I didn't falter. Delusions? I asked, tilting my head toward Dr. Veronica Hayes. Google my name. Right now. Her fingers were already moving. Within seconds, her tablet screen glowed. She raised it so the board members around her could see. Forbes. Last month. Harper Collins. The most powerful female CFO under 40. The gasp that spread across the room was almost symphonic. Ethan's smile faltered, then collapsed entirely. That must be another Harper Collins, he muttered. With the same face? Someone in the crowd called out, half amused, half appalled. Laughter uneasy but undeniable rolled through the tables. I stepped forward, reclaiming the microphone with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. You want to talk about delusions, Ethan? Let's talk numbers instead. 40,000 lost in crypto, 30,000 in a failed startup, 20,000 in options trading. You didn't support this family, you bled it dry. Maggie's sob broke through the hum. Ethan, tell me she's lying. I was trying to multiply it. Ethan's voice cracked, desperation naked now. For all of us. I wanted more for this family, more than her spreadsheets could ever provide. I turned slowly, sweeping the crowd with my gaze. More? My parents have $500 left in their account. That's the legacy of Ethan Caldwell's generosity. 5 years of my sacrifices vanished into his ego. Whispers hissed across the ballroom like wildfire. Donors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Phones captured every word, every crack in Ethan's facade. Richard surged to his feet, his voice booming with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. Harper, that's enough. You're destroying your brother's career out of jealousy. My pulse spiked, but my voice remained even. Jealousy? Let's be precise, Dad. I didn't destroy his career. He did, when he lied to you, when he stole from me, and when he gambled your future away. Richard's finger stabbed the air toward me. You will never be half the person Ethan is. Never. The words, so familiar, should have gutted me. Instead, they ricocheted harmlessly, because for the first time, the room was watching him, not me. And they didn't like what they saw. Dr. Hayes stood again, her voice slicing clean through the noise. Dr. Caldwell, is it true you assured this board of guaranteed private funding? Ethan stammered. I have connections. Connections? I cut in, pulling up my phone once more. 17 missed calls from you last month, Ethan, asking about Hartfield's charitable budget. 17. I held the glowing screen high. Tell them again about your connections. The trustees murmured, their expressions darkening. Thomas Blake, the most senior among them, leaned forward. Dr. Caldwell, this institution does not tolerate deception. If Miss Collins is indeed the signatory on the Hartfield grant, your statements to us constitute fraud. Though, the word fraud detonated in the air like dynamite. Ethan's face collapsed into horror. Harper, please. He begged now, his voice small, stripped of polish. Don't do this. You're my sister. We're family. I let the silence stretch. Every eye was on me, waiting. Family, I repeated softly, letting the word linger. Family is not a license to steal. It is not permission to erase me. My voice rose, filling the vaulted ceiling. Family should mean more respect, not less. And if you can't understand that, then you've already lost everything worth saving. The room erupted not in applause, not in laughter, but in something sharper, the sound of truth finally cutting through lies. Ethan swayed, pale and speechless, while my parents sat frozen, their world unraveling in the space of minutes. And me? For the first time in 32 years, I felt seen. The room had shifted. No longer Ethan's kingdom, no longer my parents' shrine to their golden son. 200 witnesses sat at the edge of their chairs, the hum of whispers like a current under the chandeliers. All eyes were waiting for the next strike. Ethan still clutched the microphone, but his knuckles were white, his confidence leaking away like water through a cracked vase. You don't understand, he pleaded, his voice stripped of the polish that once charmed senators and donors. Everything I did was for this family. To carry the weight. To keep us respected. La Correct. Respected? I said quietly, but the microphone carried my words across the ballroom. You bled our parents dry, stole my money, and built your empire on lies. Respect doesn't come from stealing, it comes from truth. Maggie's tears streaked her cheeks as she turned toward Richard. We didn't know. Did we? Richard? Did you know? He shook his head slowly, though shame painted his face. He showed us statements. He said it was all under control. No. The trustees' table erupted with sharp whispers. Dr. Veronica Hayes, precise and formidable in her navy suit, raised her hand. Silence fell again. Miss Collins, she said, her tone steady, you claim to be the signatory for the Hartfield grant this hospital is relying on. Is that true? I stepped forward, pulling a gold-embossed business card from my clutch. The spotlight caught on the letters. Harper Collins, Chief Financial Officer, Hartfield Corporation. I set it on the podium as though laying down an ace in a high-stakes game. Yes, I said. I am the final authority. Every grant over $100,000 passes my desk, including this hospital's. Gasps spread like wildfire. Some people even stood, craning to see the card. The disbelief was palpable, but it was rapidly tilting toward awe. Thomas Blake, one of the senior board members, leaned forward. You mean to say, Doctor? Caldwell assured us of guaranteed funding that only you had the power to approve? Correct, I replied. He called me 17 times last month, begging for confirmation. He gambled his entire career on a relationship he never respected. Ethan's face drained of color. He shook his head, but no words came. Dr. Hayes's eyes sharpened like blades. Dr. Caldwell, do you understand what this means? You misrepresented funding sources to the board. That isn't just reckless, it's grounds for immediate disciplinary action. The tension snapped into chaos, phones buzzing, donors whispering, a trustee rising to leave. But I wasn't finished. I lifted the microphone, my voice slicing through the noise. The $500,000 grant your new chief promised? It will not be going to Street Martin's pediatric program. That promise dies tonight. The room erupted shouts of disbelief. Gasps. The frantic tapping of texts. My mother sobbed openly now, Richard burying his face in his hands. Ethan staggered toward me, his voice cracking. Harper, please. Don't do this. You'll ruin me. No, I said, my words steady as stone. You ruined yourself when you chose lies over integrity. I'm not here to destroy you, Ethan. I'm here to stop disappearing. I turned to the trustees, to the donors, to the hospital's leadership. The grant will still go out, but not here. It will fund something better. A new foundation, scholarships for students who have been invisible their whole lives. Because invisibility doesn't mean insignificance. For a beat, silence. Then, murmurs of admiration began to rise, quiet, hesitant, but undeniable. Ethan collapsed against the podium, his empire crumbling in real time. My parents sat shattered, the mythology they had built around him reduced to dust in a single evening. And me? I stood taller than I ever had before, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. For the first time, my voice filled the room and no one dared to look away. The chandeliers no longer sparkled, they glared, throwing merciless light on the wreckage of a family exposed. Ethan slumped against the podium, his breath ragged, his carefully crafted image shattering under the weight of truth. My parents sat pale and motionless, their pride hollowed out, their faces the mirror of every denial they had once chosen to believe. The ballroom was still. 200 people, donors, doctors, trustees watched not a celebration, but a reckoning. I steadied the microphone in my hand, my voice clear and unshaken. For years, you all praised Ethan as the provider, the son who carried his family. But the truth is simpler. The provider was me. The invisible daughter. The disappointment. The one who wasn't worth a photograph or a headline. Tonight, invisibility ends. The silence rippled, then held. No one dared to move. I turned toward the trustees' table. The Hartfield Corporation grant will not support Street Martin's pediatric program under Ethan Caldwell's leadership, but it will not vanish either. Instead, I am redirecting $500,000 to launch the Collins Foundation for Accounting Excellence. 100 scholarships for low-income students, fully funded tuition, books, living expenses. Gasps burst through the crowd. Phones flew up to record. For a moment, the electricity of the announcement outshone the scandal. Dr. Veronica Hayes's voice cut through, calm but firm. Miss Collins, on behalf of this institution, I regret we accepted Dr. Caldwell's assurances without verifying. Transparency matters. We will submit a new proposal with new leadership for future consideration. Namaste. I inclined my head. Do that. And know this Hartfield funds integrity, not illusions. A thunderous silence followed, heavy but liberating. My eyes swept the room one final time. Donors whispered, torn between scandal and admiration. Trustees scribbled notes, already rewriting their priorities. And then, slowly, applause rose from one corner, then another. Hesitant at first, then swelling. Applause not for Ethan, not for Richard and Maggie, but for me. For the daughter who refused to remain invisible. Ethan's face crumpled as the applause swelled, his voice a strangled plea. "Harper, please, don't leave me like this. You're my sister." I met his eyes. "I was your sister when you stole from me, when you erased me, when you let our parents believe their disappointment kept us afloat. Family doesn't excuse betrayal." Maggie reached for me, her hands trembling. "We didn't know, Harper. We didn't want to know. Van." "That's the truth," I said, my voice steady but not cruel. "You didn't want to know. You chose Ethan's story over mine because it was easier. But tonight, you don't get to choose anymore. I am not invisible. Not to this room. And not to you." Richard's voice, once booming, came soft and broken. "What happens now?" I laid my business card on the table in front of them, the gold letters catching the light. Harper Collins, CFO, Hartfield Corporation. "What happens now is simple. If you want a relationship with me, it begins with respect. Not obligation, not erasure. Respect." Their silence was the closest thing to an answer they could give. I lifted my clutch, smoothed my dress, and walked back down the aisle I had once trudged in shadow. But this time the crowd parted like water. This time, eyes followed me not with pity, but with awe. My heels clicked against marble, each step echoing a truth I had buried for too long. Dignity restored, invisibility shattered. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. I breathed deeply, as though for the first time. My phone buzzed messages from board members, donors, even strangers who had already seen the live stream. Some congratulated, some pleaded, some demanded, but one message stopped me cold. "Grace, I'm leaving him." It was from Lauren, Ethan's wife. "The house is in foreclosure. He emptied the kids' college funds." I should have spoken sooner. "I'm so sorry." I sat in the back seat of the waiting car, the city lights sliding past the window, and let the weight of it settle. Ethan's empire had collapsed. My parents' illusions lay in ruins. But me? I was still standing, stronger, seen. For years, I had believed love without respect was enough. I had paid for their silence, their dismissal, their worship of Ethan. Tonight, I learned the truth. Love without respect is not love. It is debt. And I am done paying. As the car pulled away from the Fairmont, I whispered the words I wished someone had told me years ago. Being seen is not a privilege you earn. It is a right you claim. And I knew, with unshakable certainty, I would never disappear again.